You've read the title of the video, right? Well, I'll get straight into it. I'll first start by separating the builds into its own categories, and those are crowd control, single target, and general use. The first crowd control build I have is piercing ammunitions. It uses the M1000 with the hipster overclock and the Nishanka with the Bodkin points overclock. The mods I use for the M1000 are 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, or 3. And as for the Nishanka, I use 2, 1, 1, 1, 3. I use the blow 2 rounds and armor breaking mods on the M1000 in order to pierce through both multiple enemies and armor. I also use the damage mod for the Nishanka in order to balance out the loss gain from the overclock, enabling me to 2-shot normal glyphins. I generally use this in Egg Hunt, Escort Duty, and Point Extraction because how the fighting areas in these missions are tight, allowing you to have maximum amount of piercing bolts and bullets. The second crowd control build I have is Electric Detonators. It uses the GK2 with the electrifying reload overclock and the Zukovs with the embedded detonators overclock. The mods I use for the GK2 are 3, 2, 2, 1, 2. And as for the Zukovs, I use 1, 1, 2, 3, 2. I use the faster reload mod instead of the faster fire rate on the GK2 because you want to spread your bullets in order to proc electrocution on the enemies more consistently, along with being able to stack your bullet execution damage ever since the new update to the overclock came around. Now for the Zukovs, I use no damage mods because the damage mods don't affect the damage of the detonators. What I mean by this is how the damage is only increased the more bullets are in the enemy. Which is why I went for full ammo and spread reduction along with get in, get out, since you want to leave as soon as possible or you'll be slammed, spit, or shot by the tanky enemies. I use this build in on-site refining, point extraction, egg hunt, and mining expedition. The first single target build I have is Skullbreaker. It uses the Drak 25 with the overtuned particle accelerator overclock, and the Zukovs with the gas recycling overclock. The mods I use for the Drak 25 are 2, 1, 1, 2, and 2. And as for the Zukovs, I use 1, 3, 2, 1, 2. I use Plasma Splash on the Drak 25 in order to make sure I hit the target because of the minimal bullets you have, both from the overclock and the heat generated. I also use the spread reduction and ammo mods to balance out the negatives of the overclock. As for the Zukovs, I use blow 2 rounds due to the fact that the new changes to gas recycling now gives armor breaking, essentially turning it into armor breaking and swarm clearing machine. I also use spread reduction for better accuracy to counter the increased spread from the overclock. This armor breaking mod also affects damage against the plates of the caretaker, based from my experience. I mean, there isn't much about this build because it's just, well, big damage! I use this build exclusively on elimination and industrial sabotage, or if the mission has the lethal modifier. The second single target build I have is AI Specialist. It uses the GK2 again, but with the AI Stability Engine overclock along with the Nishanka having the Specialist overclock. The mods for the GK2 are a bit obvious considering there is one good option per tier specifically for this overclock, and those are 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And as for the Nishanka, I use 3, 3, 1, 1, 1. What I mean by obvious is how the mods I have selected balance out the debuffs of the AI Stability Engine, and the other mods are pointless because the two of them are recoil / spread reduction mods, and the other two are status and reload. Now the mods used on the Nishanka are specifically used for slowdown in order to have a clear shot of what you are aiming for. This is why I used the duration increase instead of the damage increase on the last tier. I use this build only on elimination or lethal modifier missions. The first general use build I have is Elementalist. Once again, it uses the GK2 but with the Bullets of Mercy overclock and the Zukovs with the Cry of Mindless overclock. The mods I use for the GK2 are 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, and as for the Zukovs I use 1, 1, 2, 1, 2. The reason why I set up the GK2 without stuns because I already have the Zukov and IFG as a form of permanent status. Due to how I set it up, if you freeze and electrify the enemies, they should take a damage multiplier of 4.73 according to tests from the user Grandmaster Sub-Zero on the DRG subreddit. That is if the frozen damage multiplier is still broken. So if it has been patched out, it could be even more damage. Look mom, I did math in a video game! The Zukovs are built similarly to how I built it with the gas recycling overclock, with the only difference of the magazine increase. This is because you would want to hit the middle of the pack of ballistics with the blow 2 rounds in order for the minus to freeze to group. You could see a more in-depth guide on how to use them on Drilling in the Name of channel. This being a general use build means you can use it in any mission type, however I suggest not using it on industrial sabotage. Last but not the least, the second general use build. I call it the Pyromancer because it uses 2 weapons specifically built to use fire. The weapons I use for this build is the Drak 95 with the underrated thermal exhaust feedback overclock and the Boomstick with the jumbo shells overclock. I have 2 ways you could build the Drak based on your own preference. The mods I use for the first setup is 1, 1, 2, 1, 1. And the second setup being 1, 2, 2, 1, 2. The first setup is much easier to use, especially with the faster overheat because of the manual heat dump mods. However, it generates less heat and damage. The second setup ends up being more of a short burst of Inferno, being much harder to use over long periods of shooting. And as if that wasn't enough, you can put the HP for Praetorian down to a quarter with 2 shots from the Boomstick, along with setting it on fire with the mods 1, 1, 3, 1, 3. This build setup I made is made for everything, so you could even use this industrial sabotage and elimination. Well, that's it for my first build video. I hope you guys like the new content, I guess. Well, I'll see you next time. Rockin' Stone!